have been discussing about the early Greek philosophers. Thales and Anaximander have been covered. We are now going ahead with the third early Greek philosopher, and that is Anaximenes in our lecture today. This is Dr. Ananya Barua, Associate Professor in the Department of Philosophy, Hindu College. Now, Anaximenes is the third in the trilogy of Thales, Anaximander and Anaximenes, and it is often said that Anaximander was the student of Thales and Anaximenes, our present protagonist of today, is the student of Anaximander. Now, like other pre-Socratic philosophers, Anaximenes' writings unfortunately haven't really survived in full. However, we must note this, that the sources where we address from are the various fragments and reports about his ideas that have been preserved in the works of later ancient authors. And these fragments and reports are called as doxographical sources, and I am precisely citing or paraphrasing from these doxographical sources today. Firstly, when we talk about Anaximenes, the main sources have been of the doxographical sources. Theophrastus, who was Aristotle's student and successor, who wrote opinions of the natural philosophers, now lost but quoted by others. We also have under the doxographical sources the thinker Atys, who was the author of a doxographical compendium titled Placita Philosophorum. Further, there is Simplicius, who was a Neoplatonist somewhere in the 6th century CE, who preserved many pre-Socratic fragments while commenting on Aristotle. We also have Hippolytus from the doxographical source around 3rd century CE, who is a Christian theology who preserved quotations in his work Refutation of All Heresies. Plutarch, the 1st century CE, is yet another source who had preserved the summaries and paraphrases of early Greek thinkers in his moral and philosophical works. So we see that there is, however, only one direct fragment traditionally attributed to Anaximenes of Greek, and it is said, which is reported by Atys, that, quote, "Just as our soul, being air, holds us together, so breath and air encompasses the whole world," unquote. And this entire quotation is considered to be the crux of Anaximenes' philosophy. Now, when we paraphrase this quotation, we find that it is said that the soul is made up of air and it gives unity and life to the body. In the same way, air is the underlying force that holds the universe together. Anaximenes here draws an analogy between human beings and the cosmos, suggesting a unifying principle between microcosm, that is man, and macrocosm, the world. Also, I must address here that there are also certain secondary paraphrases from Simplicius and Theophrastus when it comes to Anaximenes, though these are not direct quotations, but these paraphrases are based on Anaximenes' lost writings. Now, there is a very interesting quotation from Simplicius on Aristotle's Physics 24:13, where it is stated that Anaximenes held that air is the first principle, and that by rarefying and condensing, air transforms into fire, wind, clouds, water, earth, and stone. The paraphrased meaning is that all physical substances come from air, which changes its form based on how dense or spread out it is. This is one of the earliest known theories of matter transformation. Let us also pick up yet another quotation from Hippolytus, who had said that Anaximenes believed that the stars are fixed in a crystalline firmament and that the sun is flat like a leaf and travels around the world, which basically means that what Hippolytus intended to say is Anaximenes' cosmology included a flat earth and a naturalistic explanation for celestial bodies, no divine chariots, just floating discs lit by fire. Now, let's come to the original study or the philosophical insights of Anaximenes. Now that we are done quoting the sources, primary and secondary and doxographical sources of Anaximenes. First, fundamental substance or archaê for Anaximenes is air. Anaximenes proposed that the basic principle or archaê of all things is air. He believed air could transform into other substances through the process called rarefaction, which is becoming fire, and condensation, which is becoming water, earth, stone. Unlike Anaximenes' abstract apeiron, Anaximenes chose a specific observable element that could explain change in physical terms. Second is his continuity of matter. Anaximenes viewed all matter as a continuum with qualitative changes resulting from quantitative differences in density. This was a proto-scientific insight into how forms arise from processes, not fixed substances. Thirdly, naturalistic explanations of the cosmos. Anaximenes explained natural phenomena such as the formation of wind, clouds, and celestial bodies through natural processes, not mythology. He proposed that the earth is flat and floats on air like a leaf, moving with the same principle of support as our breath supports us. It's interesting now to address some of the research gaps that Anaximenes might have come up and the reason why he comes up with archaê as air. First, he found his predecessors' theories as too abstract a first principle. Now, gap in Anaximenes' theory. The apeiron or the infinite, boundless, was too vague with no observable qualities. Anaximenes filled this gap by identifying a tangible dynamic element, which is air, as both material and generative. The second research gap that Anaximenes might have found in his predecessors is the lack of mechanism for change. Anaximenes introduced mechanisms, which is rarefaction and condensation, to explain how one substance becomes another, a precursor to physical theories. The third research gap is unified explanation. Anaximenes attempted to explain both the heavens and life on earth through a single substance and process, early attempt at a unified theory of nature. Now, if we have a close look at the summary of Anaximenes' contribution through sources as displayed in the PPT here, we see that the philosopher Anaximenes, his principal archaê has been air. The nature of explanation is about material with observable transformation, and the distinctive feature is first to explain how change occurs via physical processes. So we see that Anaximenes took Anaximenes' abstract thinking and brought it back into the observable world, bridging philosophy with early physical science. Now, the question that we all should be interested at this juncture was Anaximenes actually a student of Anaximander? Yes. Most ancient sources like Theophrastus suggest that Anaximenes was a student or follower of Anaximander. He respected Anaximander' approach of seeking a single unifying principle, but he criticized the Apeiron for being too indefinite, proposing instead a more empirical and practical element, air. Now, the key legacy of Anaximenes, if we see that Anaximenes held transition philosophy towards a more systematic understanding of physical processes. Anaximenes influenced later thinkers like Heraclitus and possibly Diogenes of Apollonia, who also saw air as a fundamental force. Now, at this point, we all should be questioning, why did Anaximenes choose air as the archaea? First, air is both invisible and present everywhere, which is omnipresent. Air is always around us and essential for life, example, breathing. This made it a natural candidate for a universal life-giving substance, the very crux of archaea. Air bridges the gap between the visible and the invisible worlds, an early concept of subtle substance that animals matter. 2. Analogy with the human soul. Anaximenes said, quote, "Just as our soul, being air, holds us together, so breath and air encompasses the whole world," unquote. So these definitely connected the human being with the universe of the microcosm and the macrocosm, which was definitely a very powerful philosophical insight. 3. A concrete improvement on Anaximander' Apeiron. Anaximander' Apeiron was abstract and undefined. Anaximenes brought philosophy back to the physical world, choosing a visible, measurable and experiential element. Now let us see some of the influence on successive philosophers that Anaximenes did have. Heraclitus. Though Heraclitus chose fire as the archaea, he adopted the idea of transformation and cosmic processes, possibly inspired by Anaximenes' rarefaction and condensation model. Also, let us recollect that fire cannot really be lit up if there is no oxygen or air. So fire and air goes hand in hand. Stoics believed in pneuma, which is a vital fiery breath, as a force that organizes and sustains the cosmos, clearly rooted in Anaximenes' concept of air as life-giving. Aristotle. While critical of the Milesians, Aristotle recognized Anaximenes for introducing mechanisms like rarefaction and condensation into natural philosophy, laying groundwork for physical theory. Now, if we concentrate on these PPT as displayed here, we see that the reason for choosing air has been that it is life-giving and all-pervasive. The explanation given is air is necessary for breath and is everywhere. Secondly, it is a visible transformation, and the explanation is changes from via rarefaction and condensation. Again, why air is archaea for Anaximenes is that it is linked to the soul. Air connects body and soul, microcosm and macrocosm. Further, the reason why Anaximenes chose air as archaea is the balance of material and abstract, and the explanation he provided was that it is more concrete than Apeiron and more dynamic than water. And we see that the influence of it has been about life as breath, and philosopher Diogenes of Apollonia was definitely influenced, and the impact that has had been is air has a mind and governs all. Further influence can be seen in change through tension of philosopher Heraclitus, and the impact is about fire as dynamic process inspired by air's transformations. Further influence on the cosmic order by philosopher the Stoics group is well seen when pneuma as an emitting force was further carried out. Last but not the least, the influence of mechanism of the philosopher Aristotle is also well appreciated, where the impact of Aristotle did acknowledge physical reasoning in pre-Socratics. Now, we must see how the connection between Anaximenes and, say, the Oriental philosophy, if any, has been there. Though Anaximenes lived in 6th century BCE, Ionia or Asia Minor, there are conceptual parallels between his philosophy and Eastern or Oriental thought systems, especially from Indian, Chinese and early Persian traditions. While we lack historical proof of direct contact, the similarity in metaphysical intuition is striking. 1. Air as vital energy. Anaximenes, as we understand by now, for him air is the origin and sustainer of all things. The soul is air. Air holds us all together. Air changes into direct forms through rarefaction and condensation. Similarly, in Indian philosophy, in the Vedic and Upanishadic thought, prana or the vital breath or life force is definitely being a key takeaway. Prana flows in all beings and connects individual life to cosmic life. In the Chandogya Upanishad, breath is described as the sustaining principle of life. Now, if we come to the Chinese Taoism, we see that the Qi element or the energy flow or breath of life is there palpably. Or the Qi or the Qi is the fundamental force of the cosmos and the body in the Chinese Taoism. Like Anaximenes' air, the Qi is both cosmic and personal, fluid and transforming. So all these traditions equal breath or air with life, unity and transformation, suggesting a universal human intuition about the nature of existence and vitality. Cosmic and human unity. Anaximenes had further quoted that, quote, just as our soul, air, holds us together, so breath and air encompasses the world, unquote. And this is a repetitive quotation we would find when it comes to Anaximenes, for this is definitely one of the most significant quotes. And similarly, or to a certain extent, in the Indian Upanishads, we see the quotation, as is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm, which is yatha pinde tatha brahmande. In Taoism, we see that humans are seen as reflections of the Tao, which is the way of the universe, and attuned through breath and harmony. Now that we have seen the connect of Anaximenes with our erstwhile Orientalists, from the Taoists to the Indian philosophers to the Parsis, let us now see the relevance of Anaximenes' air in the contemporary times. And when I say contemporary, I mean the post-COVID-19 context. Renewed awareness of air as life-sustaining COVID-19 was primarily a respiratory disease. It directly attacked breath and lungs. We also know that the global crisis reminded us of how air is life. So like Anaximenes, that air holds us together, literally, biologically, socially, and clinically. It has been hence proved as the post-COVID-19 context. Anaximenes' idea that life is bound by air now takes on a medical, ecological, and existential significance. Let's see some of the environmental concerns here. Air pollution and breath. During global lockdowns, people noticed cleaner air, bluer skies, and quieter cities. Post-COVID, air quality became a public health and ecological issue, leading to broader discussions about sustainability and breathability. Anaximenes' view that air is the base of all things aligns with environmental philosophy. What we do to the air, we do to the cosmos and ourselves. Further, breath as a spiritual practice. Yoga, meditation, and breath work became crucial tools for mental and emotional well-being during and after the pandemic. Practices like pranayama, mindful breathing, flourished globally. Anaximenes' link between breath, soul, and cosmic order foreshadows the modern rediscovery of ancient breath-based wisdom. Philosophical ecology. Post-COVID thought is turning towards holistic ecological models of health, mind, body, environmental interconnection. Anaximenes' air-based cosmology offers an early model of interdependence, seeing no sharp boundary between self and world. Now, if we have a look at the PPT that is being displayed here, and we talk about the themes and the Oriental parallel and the modern relevance, we see that in the PPT displayed about the vital force, Anaximenes, he was clear that air is soul and life, and the parallel he's talked about is the prana of the Indian, or the ki of China, or the shi of Taoism, and the modern relevance has been about breath, awareness, mental health. Transformation theme, Anaximenes talks about rarefaction, condensation. Oriental parallel has been the dynamic ki or 5 elements. And the modern relevance, of course, has been the scientific and ecological understanding. The theme of unity of being, Anaximenes talks about human soul is equivalent to cosmic air. Oriental parallel has been the Upanishadic micro and macro unity. And the modern relevance has been the systems, thinking in medicine and ecology. Further, the theme of spiritual practice, we see in Anaximenes, he did claim that air holds us together, and the Oriental parallel of breath as spiritual energy is well taken care of, with the modern relevance of resurgence of breath-based wellness. Last but not the least, the theme of environmental insight, Anaximenes did talk about air as the origin of all, or the archaea, with the Oriental parallel of nature as sacred, and the modern relevance focuses on clean air and sustainability. So we see that Anaximenes' choice of air as the source of all turns out to be profoundly timeless, connecting ancient cosmology, Eastern metaphysics, modern medicines, and ecological philosophy. In a post-pandemic world where breath became both fragile and sacred, his insight resonates more than ever before. Now, the question that we all should be asking at this point is it just all these factors and nothing more that Anaximenes thought air to be the best candidate for Archaea? Let us explore more. Anaximenes believed air was fundamental and dynamic. It could transform into all other forms of matter through rarefaction, which is becoming fire, and condensation, which is becoming water and earth. These made air more versatile than Thalian water or the indefinite aperion of Anaximander. Further, air is something which is present in all living things. Air is invisible yet vital, sustaining life through breath, connecting it with the soul psyche. The cosmically activeness is the further possible reason for choosing air as the archaea. Air was not passive matter, but the force that shaped the cosmos, weather, and body. Now, let us discuss at this point and take a detour from the Oriental tradition and check what the Panchabhutas have to do with our early Greek philosophers. As we find in the PPT here, the comparison with Panchabhuta, we see in the Indian side the Akasha, the element is ether or space, the qualities have been subtle, formless, and Anaximenes' view is definitely he has not really addressed directly here. Vayu or air, qualities are motion and breath, and this is where Anaximenes comes in, for he chose Vayu or air as Archaê. Agni or fire, where it is about energy and transformation, and definitely Anaximenes picks this up as well when he talks about the rarefaction process of air becomes fire via rarefaction. When it comes to apas or jala or water element, which is about fluid or cohesion, we see that Anaximenes' view about air becomes water via condensation is also taken up. Lastly, about the Prithvi Tattva of the Panchabhuta, which is about earth element, the solidity and the support being the qualities. Anaximenes' view is that mostly it is a condensed form of air. So amongst the Panchabhuta, except Akasha, we see Vayu, Agni, Apas and Prithvi have also been taken up by Anaximenes, with air or Vayu being the superhero in his philosophical insight. Now, we will be going ahead in this direction, and let us see why air was considered superior. Quickly, again, it has been the balance of abstract and physical, and neither was it too subtle like ether, nor was it too rigid like earth, and that is the reason why air stood out amongst the Panchabhutas, or air was superior. Also, the other feature of the bridge between spirit and matter, and for air connects the intangible or the soul with a tangible body or world, has been considered yet another reason why air is considered as the archae or superior amongst the other prevailing Panchabhuta elements. In our next class, we would be discussing more about the convergence of Anaximenes' Vayu or air with Eastern thought. Thank you so much.